Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. It is IPL season. IPL fever is alive and kicking. I know Varun and DJ have gone a little bit up and down about their level of excitement in the new 10-team format, so we'll talk a little bit about that. But for today, I'm your host, Ashwin. I'm joined by Varun. DJ is, I believe, gallivanting about Portugal or somewhere fun. So Varun, it's just you and me. How are you feeling, man? It's been a rough week as a Delhi fan, right?
Yeah, it's been ups and downs. It's been a rough week as a Delhi fan. But I would say I think the quality of the games is getting better. So that's a good thing. You're seeing the batsmen come into play a little bit more. You're seeing the pacers come into the action. And Mumbai Indians still hasn't won a game, which is fantastic news for us because they just keep winning. And we have to also admit that, I know you'll walk through the points table, but Sunrises is doing really well. They're still playing boring cricket, but they're doing really well.
Yeah, I will want to talk to you about that because at what point is boring cricket acceptable if it's winning cricket, right? Like I'm sitting here looking at the points table, which I'll run down as it stands. And again, we record on Sunday. And by the way, very happy Easter Sunday to all of you who celebrate. Gujarat and Lucknow, two new franchises, are sitting 1 and 2 with 4 wins each. Close second are Bangalore and Hyderabad, also with 4 wins. So RCB is doing well under a new captain. Again, we'll talk this as we get into the match. Hyderabad just seems to have found... Now, again, Hyderabad lost their first 2, and we were all, yep, we predicted this, and then now they're on a 4-match winning streak, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Keeping down the list, Rajasthan won 3, lost 2. You know, about par for the course, right in the middle. You've got Rajasthan, KKR, Punjab, and maybe Delhi, kind of middle to lower middle of the table, with winning about 50-ish% of their games. And then languishing at the bottom, CSK, who finally notched up their first win. So they're now 1 out of 5, excuse me, they've won. And by the time you're listening to this, it looks like they might have won up their second. It looks like they're doing pretty well while we record this. And Mumbai Indians, it's still languishing 0 out of 6. So, Varun, you mentioned Hyderabad. Any other kind of surprises or points table sort of exactly as you expected?
No, I mean, apart from Hyderabad, I thought Rajasthan would be a little bit higher, but everyone's just about coming into that 5-6 game playing kind of streak. So it'll take some time. I think if Rajasthan were to win their next game, that would be as per expectation. Again, like I said, SRH is like nothing against them, and we know their fans listen to us and stuff. Like, really well done. Honestly, that's all I want to say. Really well done.
Right. I think that was a fairly politically correct answer. So well said. When we last recorded, Varun, we were done about last weekend's games-ish. So, our listeners seem to be enjoying the format where we just run down the week's games, not in too much detail, but we'll just cover the highlights and who's done well, who hasn't. So I'm going to start on the game, which was the 21st match of the tournament. Gujarat versus the Sunrises Hyderabad. And I'll run down this one. We can just alternate. This was it. The Hyderabad came in just fresh off of a win against the CSK team. And Gujarat had not yet lost. And of course, you're thinking, all right, Hardik Pandya is looking great. Gujarat are undefeated so far. They're playing Hyderabad, who've won 1 of their first 3. All right, this should be a pretty easy win for the Gujarat team. And interesting start with them only putting up 162 on the board. So top order didn't quite deliver. I'll come back and ask you about one player in particular. No very stellar standout bowling performances. Washington Sundar looked good. Bhuvi and Natarajan picked up 2 wickets each. But Hardik Pandya coming into bat at 4. Let me ask you about that, right? He made a great 50, but he batted at about 120-odd strike rate. And we talked about this a little bit. Is this the captaincy effect? Again, we talked about it last week, but now if Hardik Pandya is batting at 120 strike rate, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about captaincy, but we also didn't talk about the fact that people are playing in different positions. And so when the 3 guys ahead of you are 19, 7, and 11, and below you is 12, I don't think he had much choice, right? So it's always going to be a tough one. What I think is to stay not out and have 50 or 42, that's probably the gap. Playing at 120 strike rate throughout the first 16, 17 overs, I can understand that. But yeah, to stay not out, to me, it just feels like, he didn't go for that, the killer kind of blows in the last few overs. And I think that was what was surprising, because that's what we're used to seeing Hardik Pandya. I saw highlights of him from another innings where he hit 91 of 33 or something. So when you watch that and then you see this, it's a different kind of player. But hey, this is what happens sometimes, right? This is what the team needs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, right? If you think about Gujarat's structure, and by and large, they've done well, but then David Miller is a late order hitter. He couldn't put bat on ball. Abhinav Manohar hit some big boundaries, and then they played near the end. So, of course, wasn't able to make good. Pretty straightforward chase. We talked about captains batting at 120 to 130 strike rate. Kane Williamson finally found his nick, did just that, made a good 50, backed ably by Abhishek Sharma. I mean, you look at the batting order, and two of the top three being Abhishek Sharma and Rahul Tripathi, and on paper, it's not great. But if Kane can anchor and Tripathi can hit some big runs, I think, again, made it pretty straightforward. And then Nicholas Pooran came in. Nick Pooran and Markram at 4 and 5, both played for Punjab last year and have proved a masterstroke for Hyderabad. Right on paper, again, not quite what you'd expect, but they've proved good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would think Pooran should be playing higher, but it seems to be working for them. So don't change anything. And we're going to talk more about. I think they've got 2 more games this week that we're going to cover, right? So there'll be a lot of chat about them.
Absolutely. So Gujarat notches up their first loss, Varun. The next game was CSK playing Bangalore, and CSK desperate for a win here. Talk us through it. It was pretty magnificent.
Yeah, CSK desperate for a win. CSK didn't start that well. Gaikwad again not finding form, just 17 of 16. And I think he had single digits for all his innings before that. Moeen Ali, also a guy who's struggling. Remember, these are 2 guys who have been retained. And I mean, for all purposes, half the season is done. And they have done nothing to contribute. But then Uthappa, oh my God. If I'm not mistaken, this is his highest score in the IPL. It's come in here like when he's his oldest in the IPL, 88 of 50 balls at a strike rate of 176 when wickets were falling around him. The striking was so clean, so much confidence. He was finding the gaps. I mean, 9 sixes and 4 fours. That is unheard of. I was stunned when I saw the person.
Confirming it's his highest score, sorry.
Yeah. So 9 sixes is just, my mind was blown. And then who on the other end, this young guy who everyone's been talking about but has never kind of come into his own. Well, that's what they say about Chennai, right? You come into Chennai and then you find your kind of calling. Shivam Dubey, 95 of 46 with a strike rate above 200, 8 sixes. Now, if you guys were not watching this live, I feel like I was watching highlights when this was going on live. So I can't even imagine what watching the highlights would be like. I don't know. I don't know what to say. It was just phenomenal kind of batting. They powered them to 216 for 4 in 20 overs. And just to give you perspective, it was 36 for 2 in 6.4, and it was 200 in 18.5. That's the kind of impact these guys had. So overall, phenomenal. Now, we know that when a team hits 216, it's always going to be difficult. But you also know that if one team crosses 200, it's very likely that the second team will get close. And that's exactly what happened. RCB hit 193 for 9 in the 20 overs. It still looks like quite a distance. But like I said, getting close to 200 was great. Their captain and ex-captain are just not clicking. If I'm not mistaken, they're just getting single-digit scores throughout. So Faf at 8, Kohli at 1. Don't know what's happening. Maxwell showed a little bit of kind of glimpse, 2 4s, 2 6s, but he always looks very restless at the crease. Like, I almost feel that when I watch Maxwell, he's uncomfortable if he has to play too long. But I mean, he's a great player and he will come into his own there. But it just didn't get clicking. Your number 4, 5, 6, and 7 all had somewhere between 30 and 40. And it was just 216 was just too much. Special call out to guy who you picked as your captain, I think, in Theekshana. 4 wickets. How did you feel about that?
Man, I needed it, right? I think I had Faf. I think I had a couple of other guys just underperform. I think I had picked Moeen, who did poorly with the bat. So I just needed Theekshana to come good, and boy, did he. But Varun, talk to me quickly. We'll talk more in the next games about the guy who's playing this quote-unquote finisher role for the Royal Challenge Bangalore, and that's Dinesh Karthik. Last week we were celebrating that he basically won the game against his former franchise in KKR. Now he made 34 of 14, phenomenal. Left it a little short, but he had too much to do in this game. But when the top order clicks, he's recently released a quote that he wants to be back to play in India colors for the T20 World Cup.
Yeah, and sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to put it out there in the universe, right? When things are going your way, you gotta state it. Like everyone knows that every single person playing the IPL wants to play for India, but Dinesh Karthik had to call it out because
But if I'm not
he's.
mistaken, he's already contracted as a commentator for the World Cup. Like,
Oh, is it? I
yeah,
mean, I'm sure he can
it's
rip up that
amazing.
contract, and it'll be fantastic for whoever is broadcasting to say that they couldn't have him. But
Absolutely.
yeah, this is what you put it out there, and you never know what happens. So I'm really glad he said that, because you don't want to leave things to chance or by choice. But yeah, I mean, he's halfway through the tournament. His strike rate is 200 plus. They talk about clarity of role, and that's what he said. That the minute he got picked up in the auction, Sanjay, and I'm assuming Sanjay means Sanjay Bangar, I'm not 100% sure, called him and said, "You're going to play the finisher for this team." And so much so that sometimes they're not sending him in even when there's a top order collapse. So it's just that clarity, man. Sometimes that helps.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is we've been doing this podcast for just over 4 years at this point, and you have been so consistent in your belief that batters can adjust, but when they're given role clarity, it gives them the ability to settle it. And I think this is a perfect. We talked about it with Rahul batting opening, and then five, and then all over the place for India, and it's absolutely right. I think Dinesh Karthik is loving his role as finisher. Interestingly, I think our podcast's first episode was right around the Nidahas Trophy when he made that famous 22 of 8. So a little bit of edges and sledges history for you there. Right, let's keep going. We move back to Pune, where the Mumbai Indians took on the Punjab Kings. Not a lot to write home about, except one young overseas batsman who I'll talk about in the second innings. But Shikhar Dhawan, being Shikhar Dhawan things, made 70 at about 70 off 50, so better than what you expect his strike rate to be. Mayank looked good as well, and Jitesh Sharma came in as wicketkeeper. We talked briefly about him last week, but he is showing he has the ability to just start going bang, bang, boom from the first ball, which is giving, in a world where Livingston didn't perform for one game, which seems so bizarre to think about, it still gave the Punjab Kings the flourish that he did at the end. They made 198. And then I wanted to quickly talk about the Mumbai Indians chase, right? So first off, they fell short by 12 runs. Odin Smith, after having a horrendous last over in the previous game, ended up picking up 4 wickets. Some what we call junk wickets near the end, but wickets are wickets. Ended up picking up 4. So kudos to him and kudos to Mayank and the Punjab administrative staff for backing him. Let's talk about the skipper, right? I made a specific comment last week that Rohit just looks so rushed out there. He's batting on 28 of 17. His partner Ishan Kishan has gotten out relatively early in the fourth over. Or sorry, no, Ishan Kishan was on the other end. He's on 28 of 17. Kishan hasn't really faced a lot of balls, and he just skies a Rabada shot. Like what is happening to Rohit? Where's the Rohit Sharma that we know and love?
I don't know. People are asking all sorts of questions that just the Indian captaincy mean that you lose touch, you lose form. I don't know. I have no idea what he's up to. It's just that all I can say is that he scored enough runs in his career for us to allow him six matches on the trot without too many runs. It's okay. It happens sometimes. You're seeing Kohli, you're seeing Rohit now. Before you jump to conclusions and say they should not be playing T20, it's okay. That all I can say is it happens sometimes. If the players around you score runs, it doesn't feel that big of a problem. If you're losing every game and you're the captain and you're not making runs, it's going to be a huge issue. So Rohit just kind of has to block some of this stuff out and just keep going. Like I said, I think Mumbai Indians are now in a situation where they're just going to have to try different players, try different combinations, and get ready for next year. It's going to be very hard to make the playoffs.
Wow. So you're already, I mean, I think mathematically it is pretty hard, but you're already saying, hey, look to the future. I mean, next year they probably have Archer back. I think they have Riley Meredith, who's in the squad, who's not coming. Like, are they already setting up for next year? That's really interesting.
I think so. 6 losses on the trot. It's not going to be that easy. But I want to call out Brevis, man. Like
he was in your fantasy team, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think I trumped him as well. Like he was excellent. Some of those shots, and it's not just those slog shots. Some of his offside shots are just fantastic. So, guys, we've mentioned him before, but if you haven't, please go watch highlights of him. And yeah, he's just phenomenal. I mean, he's got all the ex-cricketers talking about him. Ben Stokes is tweeting about this kid. It's really phenomenal.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is we talk a lot about Indian uncapped players and how they find their form, and even this season, whether it's an Anuj Rawat or like, there's always some good bright young spots, or even Suyash Prabhu. They say like bright young Indian uncapped cricketers. I can't think of a lot of 18-year-old uncapped overseas cricketers, because think about fighting for one of 4 spots in a side, and he's basically a shoe into this to a world champion winning side, right? It's unbelievable what he's been able to accomplish.
Yeah, and if he was in other teams, he probably wouldn't have got a game so far. So let's take this as a blessing in disguise that Mumbai's team is a little bit weaker than everyone would have thought, and that's why he's getting a guaranteed spot in the 11. Remember, Tim David is sitting out for him, but Tim David should equally be playing, and I think you'll see him come into the mix in the second half of this tournament.
I think Tim David got 8.5 crores, and like it's interesting to think about which players have received such large sums of money and sat on the bench. So anyway, somebody better with numbers than me will do an analysis, I'm sure.
Like Nokia, right? He's received
some. Now,
he's just
I guess Tim David didn't do anything wrong. The Nokia bowled 2 beamers, had to be taken off the attack. So maybe he's just not feeling it. Maybe there's jet lag. Who knows? Who knows what it is? But we will keep going.
Yeah. You've been saying jet lag for 3 weeks. I'm pretty sure he's over the jet lag.
And I'm trying to come up with an excuse. How can one of your retained players not, like Rabada's in the form of his life right now? We're sitting here saying we picked Nokia over Rabada. We picked him over Shreyas Iyer, right? Like we picked, I don't know, you sit here and look, and this is not the Delhi Capitals show, but you sit here and look at the 3 retentions Delhi made, and arguably 2 of them were not great. Akshar Patel's having a fine season, but he's batting at 8 now, 9 maybe, something below Shardul.
Like, and I think he's picked up 1 wicket in 5 games.
Yeah, so was he worth a retention for bowling 4 overs at a good economy rate, but not taking wickets and not really batting? He had 1 good knock where he made runs at the end, so no hate, but think of the look of this team if we had retained Shreyas, Pant and Rabada instead. So very, very different.
Yeah.
Right. But we're not here to just talk the Delhi Capitals. Varun, we're going to talk the 4th game of the week. I think this is you, because I talked the first 3. So the Gujarat versus Rajasthan. Run us down it.
Yeah. So this is, again, when I started the show and said that the IPL has picked up, it's because the last 4 innings we talked about were 216, 193, 198, 186. And in the Gujarat versus Rajasthan Royals, Gujarat put up 192. So 5 in a row innings that we got to watch as fans around 190. That it doesn't get better than that. So Gujarat come out on the back of a loss to Sunrises, like we spoke. And again, top 3, very ordinary. Shubman Gill started off extremely well. Everyone started picking him in their fantasy team. And then he's just done nothing since. But Hardik Pandya, this time, hit 87 of 52. 8 fours, 4 sixes at strike rate of almost 170. That kind of changed the game. It brought us back to that Hardik Pandya that we know. He was very well supported by Abhinav Manohar, who's doing really well so far. But the key for me is when David Miller starts hitting, the Gujarat Titans will look like a very, very different side, because his lower order, like striking of 31 of 14 balls, basically complemented Pandya and got them to 192. So overall, I was happy to see Miller in the mix, because I think this guy just pretty much plays 1 innings every IPL, but he finds himself in the playing 11 always. So I hope he does better this year. Rajasthan Royals came out and Butler was just on fire. I mean, I think it was, again, like 4, 4, 4, 6, 4, 6, 54 of 24 balls, strike rate of 225, and just got beaten by a very smart, slower Yorker by Lockie Ferguson. So well done to Ferguson, because Butler looked like he was ready to finish this game.
Have you been watching those clips? There was this, I don't remember who it was by, but there was another slower Yorker that got him dismissed last year or something. So just kudos to the thinkers, the analysts, whoever's in the team that told Lockie, or maybe it was Lockie himself, like just bowl, like try that slower Yorker, because he's been bowled to that before in the IPL. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah. And that what happened is then they just didn't get going. Like after Butler, and I'm surprised because they ended up making 155. So Butler made 54 of those. But after that, the scores kind of read 0, 8, 11, 6, 29. And also, Ravichandran Ashwin came in at 3. Now, we understand him coming in when there's a collapse. We understand that he got retired out for the sake of a newer, younger batsman who can probably hit, run faster. But there was no logic to him coming in at 3 in this game. Like, we understand there's strategic move, there's tactical changes. This to me made no sense. Ashwin, I don't know if you have a view on this.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting that he will be the guy that tries all the things, right? From the bowler's run out, which was previously called the Monkan, to retiring out for the first time, to suddenly he started bowling leg spin a couple of years ago, if you remember. Like he added a leg spinner to his. So he's going to try everything. I think when it doesn't work, it looks really stupid. I'm not saying he was a decision maker necessarily.
That's what. So he wasn't. So in Sangakkara and Samson.
Yeah, then it does look pretty stupid, to be honest.
It looks and just because Padikkal got out on his first ball, you've not sent Samson. Samson is top 3 batsman. Like, why are you sending him at 4? Because ultimately he made an 11 of 11. Rassi is just not. He's just not started his IPL, and I forget whose place is he taking.
I don't know who he played.
I can't remember, but Jaiswal's injured, and so they've tried to change the balance of the team. Hetmeyer again, fantastic. I mean, just that role he plays. I'm really upset that Delhi let him go, especially when you've got people like Akshar Patel, like you mentioned, retained. Hetmeyer was just coming into his own, in this position. There's so much confidence now. But yeah, kudos to Gujarat, because they did. It wasn't even really a close game. They got them for 155 and won by 37 runs.
So let me just ask you before we take a quick break, Varun, for the first whole week, it was almost all teams chasing one, right? As the score started to get higher, I'm looking back, I don't have the exact numbers, but before this game, Punjab won batting first, CSK won batting first, then we skipped one, Rajasthan won batting first, Delhi won batting first. So 4 of the prior games had been one batting first. How much of Rajasthan's approach to the chase was changed and shaped by realizing teams were starting to not win chasing, and when your score's close to 200, you have to show up there and take a completely different approach. Let's just let Joss Butler go hell for leather from ball 1, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's okay to do that, but again, you have to play sensible cricket. To miss by that much is just not acceptable. And if you need to go at that pace, why did you send Ashwin at 3? It makes no sense.
Yeah,
I think it was a big mistake on their part, because if Sanju Samson had clicked with Butler, it could have been a very different game.
Yeah, I think well said. And especially in a league that like this, where we know by the end of the season, it can and most likely will come down to net run rate. Even if they were getting 25, 30 runs closer, it would have helped them in a losing cause. So with that, we've covered half the matches for the week. We're going to take a quick break. We will be right back on the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. Don't go anywhere.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Storytellers and Storytellers, Vineet speaks with drum prodigy Darshan Doshi about helping young Indian drummers take to the world stage. The Simplified Gang delves into the unfortunate financial crisis in Sri Lanka. On Smarter with Sid, Siddharth observes how Lata Mangeshkar was snubbed I tell you, out of memoriam mentions in both the Grammys and the Oscars. This is an absolute disgrace. And on the Life Manifestos, Zarina explains how to beat procrastination and show up for yourself. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you enjoyed this show or any of our other shows for that matter, do please tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. You can check us out on YouTube as well. On ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, we have a list of all of our YouTube channels. Do check out if your favorite show is available as full video. We are also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you respond to our shows and advertising on the network. We'd really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it out. It helps us build better shows for you. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors for this week: SBI Life Insurance, India Water Portal, and Jupiter, a digital banking app. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. Varun, we went straight to the Brabourne Stadium in Mumbai to see the Hyderabad team take on the KKR. This is a tough match for you, right? Like, Hyderabad's team hasn't played an exciting brand of cricket, but KKR is probably your least favorite team. So who do you cheer for in a game like this?
I mean, you cheer for... I think you cheer for cricket, because it's like boring team versus a team you don't like. No, but you cheer for Sunrises for sure.
So KKR got to bat first. Aaron Finch made his debut. I think I was trying to think through. I can think of at least eight, maybe 9 sides that Finch has now played for, which is kind of unbelievable that he keeps getting released, getting picked up.
He just finds his way back. He didn't get picked in the auction.
Yeah, because it's almost like Rahane in the tests, right? Like, where he just going to play badly. We're going to say, all right, let's drop him. Then he has one good innings. Then he goes and plays great as Australia's skipper. And by the time the next season comes around, you're like, oh, maybe Finch will find form this year. And again, he's had a good run in some teams in the IPL. It's just funny to think through how many he's played for. But didn't perform. Of course, I captained him in my IPL fantasy team. So that's how you could have guessed he wasn't going to perform. Venkatesh Iyer didn't do well. Narayan came in at 4. Again, trying things, didn't do well. A good little flourish by Nitish Rana, who finally found some form with the bat because I was starting to get worried about him. And Andre Russell, of course, finished strong. Got them to 175. Credit to Umran Malik, who just looks like unbelievable, fired up. I saw a tweet the other day that basically said, Malik's fees for this IPL are the 4 crore he got in the auction and 14 lakhs guaranteed, because there's nobody going to bowl faster than him for the Swiggy fastest delivery of the day. He's guaranteed going to get it in every one of the 14 matches he plays. So he has so far. Like he's clutching 155 clicks. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I read look, Dale Steyn and Umran Malik are clearly building a relationship, but somebody asked Steyn, what do you tell him, right? And he said, all I tell him is that anybody can bowl 130. So don't lose your pace. We'll figure out everything else.
It's so different to the Indian coaches of years past, where we saw so many bowlers start quick and lose their pace to focus on swing and line. And I think, how great is it going to be that he has a bowler like Steyn in his camp? So 175 for the KKR team. Pretty uneventful chase. Kane Williamson, neither of the openers, Williamson or Sharma, did well. But then Rahul Tripathi, 71 off just 37 balls, ably supported by, again, this 4 and 5 in Aidan Markram, making 68 off 36. They've made it look easy, finished 175 run chase with more than 2 overs to spare. So kudos to the Hyderabad team. Not a lot to write home about. I've been a little bit disappointed in Pat Cummins, who since his first match heroics with that fastest 50 in the history of the IPL has not really delivered anything much. So the KKR setup will be looking for Pat Cummins to come good, but didn't happen again. So Varun, let's go back. Mumbai versus Lucknow then. Another Mumbai loss. We just enjoy talking about these. I don't know why it gives so much joy, but I'll let you handle this one.
Yeah, another Mumbai loss. KL Rahul's 100th game. As soon as they started the innings, they showed highlights from 3 years ago where Rahul had a century against Mumbai. And my friend messaged me saying, I hate that they're showing these highlights because I've got every batsman in both teams except Rahul. And I said, well, I've got Rahul captain. So I'm very happy that they're showing the highlights. And lo and behold, exactly that happened. So KL Rahul in his 100th match went out and hit 103 off 60 balls. Not out, strike rate 170 for all of those who thinks he was going to bat at 120 and lose the match. He was basically like kind of supported by everyone, not supported by everyone. It didn't really matter. Everyone around him hit somewhere between 10 and 30 runs. But this was the KL Rahul show all the way. I think he did extremely well. There was nothing Mumbai was doing to stop him. And look, he took his chances really well. He gave Bumrah the respect he deserves. Bumrah bowled 4 overs for 24. That's economy of 6 when the rest of the team has gone at 10. They just tore apart Timel Mills. I mean, 3 overs, 54. They did it very smartly. Like I said, to give Bumrah the respect and then still go at 10 runs and over overall was just fantastic.
Can I just ask you on the bowlers? Like I look at the Mumbai bowling lineup and I say versus years past, which was like Bumrah, Malinga, Nathan Coulter-Nile or Mitch McClenaghan, Rahul Chahar, Hardik Pandya. Like you put Bumrah aside, the four full-time bowlers were Murugan Ashwin, Jaydev Unadkat, Tamal Mills, and Fabian Allen. Like none of these 4 would have made a Mumbai team of last year, right?
Yeah, they wouldn't have. Look, I mean, Rahul Chahar, Hardik Pandya, Krunal Pandya, Trent Bolt were bowling, I think, 12 overs, 12 of the 20 overs between these 4 bowlers.
It's unbelievable.
So there's no support for Bumrah. He can't throw the ball to anyone after him and think that the pressure is going to build so that he can take a wicket in his next over. It's just a bad situation. Now, yes, I can't help but think that when Jofra Archer is back, this team will look different. 8 overs from Bumrah and Archer. But for the time being, it's just not clicking. So Mumbai then went out 181 for 9. Again, the openers just not doing anything. Like Kishan 13, Rohit 6. Brevis again. This is where his offside shot. So go and watch the highlights of this game if you haven't. Brevis, Sky, Tilak, Pollard, all trying again between 20 and 30. They did manage to get 181 for 9, and with Pollard batting in the final over, you thought you never know what's going to happen, but it just wasn't meant to be. So Mumbai now have lost 6 out of 6 matches. And there are some very funny memes going around because they were ready for their 6th trophy this year and they've lost 6 on the trot. So I think this is goodbye for Mumbai. And Lucknow, fantastic win. I mean, beating them by 18 runs. Just a great performance.
I planned this badly because I should have started in different alternate order, because now I have to sit here and cover the very, very painful Delhi versus RCB game. We've all said over the years as Delhi fans, because of Kohli, because RCB's also been the underdog, they're kind of the second team we like to cheer for. So when Delhi's not playing, I cheer for RCB, I think. But Delhi actually won the toss here. Rishabh Pant put RCB into bat as expected and got them 5 for 1 and 13 for 2. You're sitting there at 13 for 2 with Faf back in the hut. And then Lalit Yadav creates a moment of magic. Direct hit to get one of the best runners between the wickets out by just about an inch, and just a magnificent. I would have said if this was last year and Kohli was captain, I would have said that run out ended Lalit Yadav's hopes of playing for India ever, because Kohli would have been bad. But phenomenal. They're sitting at 40 for 3. Maxwell comes, takes Kuldeep Yadav to the cleaners in the first over. Kuldeep gets his revenge next over, which was nice to see, but just smacks the ball everywhere. And then Shahbaz Ahmed looked good. And then it was the Dinesh Karthik show, as we talked. 66 off of 34. Very small ground. You think, okay, on paper, 189 is not that bad. But when you have a top order heavy lineup at 40 for 3, you're just thinking you've missed a trick by letting RCB get to 180.
And that's what we talked about, role clarity, right? At 40 for 3, did you say it was?
Yeah.
At 40 for 3, Dinesh Karthik didn't come in.
Yeah.
Dinesh Karthik came in at 92 for 5.
Incredible.
Faf, Anuj, Kohli, and Maxwell all had to get out for Dinesh to then walk in, and he still saved the day because there were enough overs to go.
So Dinesh's role will be coming with X amount of overs left, right? If you lose 3 quick wickets, don't come in and become an
like Russell, like Russell, right? That's what it is. Like, don't come in and try to bat 15 overs.
You said like Russell. Thankfully, DJ is not on the show. If he was here, he would have said, yeah, like MS, right? That's MS's role.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But disappointing performance from Mustafizur and Kuldeep. And you can't help but think when your quicks are going for runs. And by the way, Shardul and Khalil have both looked good. But when your quicks are going for runs, you can't help but think Nokia is sitting there on the bench, and even with one bad out.
And look, there are lots of people who are saying, should Nokia come in for? Look at this Delhi team. Khalil and Fizz are beautiful together, and Shardul is batting so well. I'm sorry, these guys have the ability that when they want to get hit, they're going to get hit for 70 runs in those 4 overs. Okay,
yeah.
So anyone who thinks Nokia should not be playing, please understand that. Look, I respect Khalil a lot for turning his game around, but it's early days. Please don't forget that when he gets hit, those 2 overs that he gets hit for are going to change the game. So they're going to have to find space for Nokia.
Yeah, so let me just ask you that now. I was going to ask you, though. Rovman Powell has arguably been the biggest failure so far this season, and it's been 5 games already. So is he the overseas player you drop and then you play Shardul as more of an all-rounder, or you bring in Sarfaraz as a batsman who doesn't seem to find a way into this 11? Rovman Powell, I think, has been the biggest disappointment. We'll talk Mitchell March in a second.
Yeah, but I mean, so we have to talk about both of them together. So why don't we just quickly say that?
Yeah, so Delhi's innings fell short. David Warner looked at his best. He was my captain in fantasy, so that was the only bright spot of a tough day. Rishabh Pant looked like he might take the team over the line, but everybody basically fell short. Mitch Marsh could not get bat on ball. And you're sitting here looking at the numbers saying 14 of 24 run out. They almost did us a favor by getting him run out. but he just could not get bat on ball. Looked scratchy. Rishabh Pant was trying to talk to him in the middle a few times and just didn't work. And everybody's had those days. And you cannot help but think about the Rahul Tewatia innings where he looked exactly like this and he turned it around. Mitchell Marsh didn't get the chance to do it today. So, Varun, let me ask you. Obviously, Delhi fell short. I'm just skipping through the painful part. RCB won. But let me ask you a couple of things. One, Mitch Marsh at 3. He didn't bowl today, but he can. And he gives you an option when your bowlers are getting hit. 2, how many more chances do you give this guy? Because he just was his first game in Delhi colours. He was stressed. He couldn't get bat on ball, but we know what he's capable of.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give him a chance, right? It's his first day out onto the field, and he's up again against Hasaranga, which is tough anyway, spinners for him. So, look, his role in Australia at 3 has been when Finch gets out in the first over. So, he comes out in the power play against the Pacers and kind of hammers on with David Warner. Now you've got David Warner there, but the IPL and Delhi is a little bit different. So if he's going to play at 3, then let's make sure he's consistently playing there and getting a chance. It's just too early. I like the option of Mitch Marsh because I think he's a great kind of limited overs cricketer. I think he can give that bowling option like you mentioned, and I think it's too early. Powell, on the other hand, just doesn't give me the confidence that he's going to consistently perform. However, the dilemma in my mind is if we get to, let's say, the playoffs or semis and Powell has the innings of his life, like he will win you the game single-handedly. So I'm a little bit concerned as to what to do here. It's not going to be that easy. And honestly, if you do need Nokia back, I think you're going to have to drop Powell and rejig that batting lineup a little bit.
What is Rishabh Pant's strategy here? So I sort of agree with you, but specifically on using bowlers was what I was going to ask first. Like Marsh and Powell both bowl. Powell bowls fairly reasonably often for the West Indies side. And when your bowlers are getting tonked, he's still using only 5 and giving them all. Like, is he operating in the mindset of a world where we had Shaw and Shreyas and Pant and these guys, none of who could bowl, and suddenly he's not used to having 2 batters who can bowl?
Yeah, I mean, I think he still backs his bowlers. That's the thing, right? He should have gone to more. You need to give some game time to all these different guys in terms of bowling. When you're getting tonked, you should have he should have done this. But look, let's also be fair. Even after Fizz got hit, he was still 4 overs 48, right? And I think he got smacked for 20-something runs in his last over. So it was just one of those days where Kuldeep got smacked in his first over. What are you going to do? You can't stop bowling him. I don't have such a problem with his captaincy on the bowling. I have a bigger problem with what he was doing on the field. Why was he lying on the floor more than he was standing up?
That's normal. Was he coughing?
He was coughing, but he was on the floor after every shot. I mean, it's one thing to say he's unorthodox. It's another thing to just lose your balance every shot you play.
That's what you love about him.
No, I think
the fact that you're struggling is making me upset.
He was just on the floor. I don't know how to explain this to you guys. Every time I looked up at the TV, Pant's nose was rubbing the ground. Okay, and I was just like, why are you not stable? Why is your core not strong? Why have you just look at how Brevis hits his shots and look at what Pant is doing. Like, he's so clumsy. He falls over his own feet. And it's not looking good, guys. Like, I think at the end of the IPL, I would love for our podcast after that to do a full debrief on who we would take to the World Cup, T20 World Cup. Because I feel like Pant's place is not 100% certain right now.
You messaged me earlier in the week that Pant is undoubtedly the best test wicket-keeper batsman we have. But I'm not sure it's true for limited overs cricket right now, which is, again, highly controversial, especially on the Rishabh Pant show. But yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, it was just not looking good. And I think Delhi is going to have to work very, very hard for this. Like, we're lucky that Chennai and Mumbai are losing their matches because it still gives us, while we are 8 out of 10, it still puts us in a mid-table because the other 2 are just 2 and 0, right?
Yeah. I think it takes 2 or 3 wins to suddenly be back up in the top 5. But, of course, that's easier said than done. Some soul searching for Delhi to do. And then we'll come quickly to the last game that we're going to cover this week, which was earlier this morning at the time of recording this, Punjab versus Hyderabad. Punjab batted first, made 151 off 10. All I will say about this innings is Liam Livingstone was 60 off 33 balls. And the rest of the team, if my math is right, quickly, it was 91 off 87 balls. So basically batted at a run a ball. And so this was entirely Liam Livingstone. 151 and 20 overs. And this, like, after all the scores we've seen, 190, 200-ish, was obviously just not good enough. Lots of struggles for the top and lower order, everybody around. Amazing performance by both Bhuvneshwar Kumar, 3 for 22, and Umran Malik, who we've already talked about, 4 for 28, went on to become man of the match, bowled a wicket maiden at the end, multiple wicket maiden, and just 4 for 28, absolutely outstanding, and sort of a nothing chase, right? Abhishek Sharma looked good. Kane didn't do well again, so Kane Williamson has failed more than he's succeeded, which I haven't seen a lot.
But he's won 6 tosses. So if you think of his job description,
right. You're right.
It's winning the toss and scoring runs. So he's doing one part of his job.
And exactly as you said with Rohit, when others are performing, it doesn't become as noticeable, right? Yeah. Like if he was constantly failing and his opening partner and the middle order were also failing, then suddenly Kane's captaincy comes into question. But he's doing great. And then again, I've mentioned them 3 times, but Aiden Markram and Nicholas Pooran, undefeated in a partnership, an 80-odd run partnership to take them over the line, but sort of a nothing performance from the bowlers other than Rahul Chahar. Nobody showed up. I think Punjab has to do some serious soul searching as well with their lineup. Odean Smith keeps finding a way in. Didn't bowl, didn't bat well today. Didn't really bowl much. Like, going to be really interesting to see. So, as we said, points table is a little bit unexpected. I don't think many people would have predicted the 2 new franchises, led ably by the 2 Coffee with Karan friends, KL Rahul and Hardik Pandya, are right at the top. But Varun, as we wrap for the week, I'm going to do a quick rundown of the Fantasy League, and then I'm going to ask you for your one fantasy tip of the week. So the Edges and Sledges Fan League has 162 teams. It is led still by the team that I have to keep mentioning for the one more week probably, called All Teams Below This Line Suck. So everybody in the league. But they are down to 13 transfers left, with more than half the league to go. So this was just a strategy to go all in early. So I'm just expecting.
I wonder if they change the name after the 30.
I don't think you can change the name. So maybe right at the bottom, they'll be right at the bottom. But Wicket Sensation continues to be right up top, still holding a good number of subs. In second place, somebody new entering the top with KVR, the champ, but also running low on subs. And then rounding out our top 5, Nordic Knights at 4 and Kansan at 5. So well played by all of you. I will say among the 3 of us, DJ still has me edged out with the 7th spot while I'm sitting in 13th, but that's only 200 odd points. And then Varun, I have to scroll a tiny bit further down for you, but you are sitting in number 39. But again, only 650 odd points behind me. So that's just one good use of a booster or one strong captaincy performance. So sitting in number 39, my friend, what is your fantasy tip for this week before we wrap up today's show?
No, I don't think I'm qualified to give a fantasy tip this week. Everything I've done has failed, but what I'll say from past experience is that this is the phase of the tournament where you start seeing the top 5 purple and orange cap holders cement their place. So just keep on the lookout for that, because now there's going to be a shuffling of number 1 to 3, 3 to 2, 2 to 1, etc. But I feel like those are the guys who are going to be in the running now.
Right. Yeah, well said. I think that's a good one. And from my perspective, my tip, I was going to say pick a random guy, but I realized I've said that before about Mahesh Theekshana. But mine is pay really close attention to what's happening on the field by way of injuries. So you saw Hardik Pandya make a magnificent 87 and bowl well, but couldn't complete his over on the field and go off. And he didn't end up playing in today's game, which is being captained by Rashid Khan. So if you picked Hardik for the 87 and then held on to him, hoping, I think the smart move is to pay attention to injuries really closely. And, while we hope Hardik is back very soon, disappointing for those folks who had him in their team already going into today's game. Right. Varun, power-packed episode. We ran through it all. Any closing thoughts on this week's IPL? Are you expecting that points table will turn around by the time we're back next week?
Yeah, I think we'll see a slight shift by the time we chat next week. So, yeah, it's going to be now Mumbai and Chennai coming to spoil the party for a lot of the other guys. So don't rule them out, okay? Because they are going to cause an upset in this table in some form.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I hope the bottom 2 stay where they are, selfishly. But we've seen before, once a team has quote unquote nothing to lose, they start to spoil the party for everybody else. So, as always, folks, we love hearing from you. We are at One Tip One Hand on all social medias. We are contact@onetiponehand.com. Send us an email. Leave us a review. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star rating and a review if you can. And on Spotify, just a rating. But again, we always love engaging with you. We're having so much fun doing the Fantasy League. We will be back next week to talk about the points table starting to solidify going into playoff season. But this has been the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. Thanks as always for tuning in. We will see you in a week's time.